Alright everyone, we start off today talking about Beijing Biden. It's sort of a normal, boring morning routine. First and foremost though, there is a pinned comment if you're watching on YouTube to 4 other video hosting sites that I use, all 4 of which do not abuse independent content creators. In fact, they love independent content creators, which is something YouTube used to be like, and 2016 was a thing and the rest was history. So you should join me on at least one of those. I make BitChute exclusives, by the way. Hit 130,000 subscribers about 24 hours ago. Now it's almost 1,000 more today. Anyway, Fascist Beijing Biden, because there's no other way to put him. The far left, by the way, should agree with me. They don't in public, but in spirit, they claim that the U.S. is far right. The Democrats are far right. So, if it's a far right totalitarian ideology, I guess Beijing Biden would be an exemplar of it. He wants to disarm the poor. You see, he's got a plan for uber scary weapons, which is that if you have a high capacity magazine or an assault rifle, neither of which really have any true federal legal bearing, this is basically a states issue, which is why this, by the way, will not happen. I doubt Joe Manchin would support them. It would fall flat in the Senate. It would be hilarious to watch the Democrats smack themselves in the cock and whip the Republicans into a frenzy and fulfill my prediction for the midterms as far as a huge red wave. The idea is that you'll have to pay a tax of $200 a year per assault weapon, which is a sporting rifle that looks tactical. Not sure if assault pistols would be on that list. By the way, the ATF classifications for weapons, if you've ever looked into them, make absolutely no goddamn sense at all. You put a long enough metal prong on the butt of a pistol and it becomes a rifle. If you use the right kind of stock on what's fairly clearly a rifle, it becomes a pistol. Some weapons go in the other category despite clearly being delineated one or the other because of the technical convolutions of modern weapons. By the way, you can still, I think, mail order black powder weapons. Some of those are pretty cool and you might blow yourself up, so keep that in mind. Anyway, to be clear, all of my weapons were tragically lost in the river, except for like the BB gun. It'd be funny if he did a tax on those too. He's like, you need a background check to get that air rifle. But and also a $200 tax on high capacity magazines. Now, let me ask you this, because some states have literally banned any magazine that holds, more than 10 rounds. What is high capacity? Well, there are 110 round 22 long rifle drums that you can get. Wouldn't that be a lot higher capacity than a 30 round mag? So, is that going to be taxed more, or are you going to leave the 30-round mag alone? And by the way, does this not contravene the 10th Amendment in the administration of gun laws at the state level? We've had this national conversation now for decades, and by and large, the anti-gunners have lost. McDonald versus Chicago, Heller versus D.C. In fact, consistently when the SCOTUS weighs in, they weigh in on the side of the Second Amendment. That's because it's fairly cut and dry. But because there's such a patchwork and because the issue is polarizing, by and large they've stopped taking up cases. With a 5-4 conservative Supreme Court, that could change. By the way, John Roberts is a liberal. Let's call him what he is. Bush was not exactly a conservative individual. His ideas of conservation, no child left was basically his conceptualization of how to run the country. No child left. You can throw them all at like a wall of meat at a bunch of jihadis. So yeah, he wants to disarm the poor, because here's the thing. Like, let's say you had a registered weapon. If you have a good income, $200 is not a particularly high amount to pay. And as far as those expanded magazines, oh, you mean those largely free-for-all unlicensed objects that you can get easily in a straw purchase? What are they going to do? They're going to say, oh, well, you didn't pay your 30-round mag tax. Oh, well, who says that I'm the owner of it? Maybe it's owned by my neighbor. You just left it here. There's going to be all sorts of legal problems if you instituted such a plan. It's essentially a tax on the poor. It's essentially a way to disarm the poor. Oh, well, you can't have an AR-15 because you have a low income, essentially. Essentially, it seems to be an attack mostly on, like, impoverished rural white Appalachia, which is very gun-friendly, but at the same time not particularly wealthy. To be clear, this wouldn't even apply to most modern weapons. It wouldn't apply to your handgun. Handguns being used in an overwhelming majority of gun crime, by the way. Wouldn't apply to that. Wouldn't apply to revolvers, which are really easy to use and amazing. Wouldn't apply to shotguns. Wouldn't really apply to much of anything except for weapons that happen to look the part of being scary. That's the difference between the AR-15 and comparable firearms. It just looks tactical and it's interchangeable, so it must be military in nature. It's topically and aesthetically based on a military weapon, therefore scary. Well, it's not scary. You're saying that the 5.56 round, okay, as opposed to that dude over there with a 50 caliber weapon, which one is more potentially lethal in nature? The AR-15 is like the ultimate whipping boy, and I think it's because of the popularity therefrom. This seems like a money grab too. Like Biden's like, well, we're gonna get all sorts of money from the homosexual crowd. Well, somebody will just opt for a weapon that's aesthetically slightly different from an AR-15 but is exactly the same and avoid your tax. There's literally no difference. Oh, okay, well, I don't have a pistol grip on this, so I guess I don't have to pay the $200. Derp. Yeah, like people won't just topically modify their weapons and use one of 1,000 legal loopholes to get around paying it anyway. Or they'll just declare their weapon stolen. There's still a lot of straw purchasing going on. Dude, you can barely even find guns and ammo at the moment in a lot of places because everything is sold out. They've literally amped up production and everyone's arming up to the teeth because they realize that shit's all fucked up right now and they don't want to be a victim. We've got far-left rioters in multiple cities. Until the last few weeks, nothing has been done about them. They've been praised, actually, by the political establishment. We've got D.C. under literal military occupation at the moment. We've got a president with Alzheimer's disease that repeatedly has talked about hating weapons and how ignorant he is about them, telling people, well, just defend your home with a shotgun. Really great idea, Beijing Biden. You've probably never fired a fucking gun in your life. I love it when he does his, like, small-town, rural, I'm from Scranton shtick, like I'm a normal person. Dude, you haven't been in that class of society in a very, very long time. Essentially, he's become a massively wealthy, sleazy empty suit. He doesn't fucking know what he's talking about. SCOTUS would probably shoot this down. The Dem Senate might not even pass it again. Joe Manchin and a few other Democrats would find themselves in a very vulnerable position if they were to vote in favor of such a thing. There are also Dems in the House, where you've got a very slim majority at this moment, and you will lose that in the midterms. That is almost a guarantee, probably by a considerable margin. There are vulnerable Dems already embattled because of their political opinions, because they represent districts that are only very slightly blue, or they're conservative Democrats. There are still several dozen of those in the House as well. Try getting the idea of taxing the poor because they have a firearm past some of these people. I don't think that it'll work, and if it did, it would lead to a SCOTUS decision probably nullifying it. At the very least, there'd be a stay on it. I would imagine that would happen on day one. It would be a big constitutional crisis, and there's no reason to bother waging it. The Second Amendment is cut and dry, despite what advocates of fascism, which is what you can term gun control, say to the contrary. It's settled science, so to speak. That's about all. Peace out.